Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite aggro decks, Xenagos, God of Rebels. Um, now, I've built quite a few Gruul commanders. I quite like Gruul. I've built Wart the Raid Mother, Rada. I messed around with the new one, Artakar, or whatever his name is. I have Bobrovsky built. That's a pretty fun deck. But I find that in a 40 life format, Xenagos performs the most consistent. Rada is, of course, exceptionally good, but the thing is, if she gets killed a couple of times, she's sort of a dead cast. She's nice in that she costs so little, so your opponents have to waste mana on getting rid of her, and she fuels some of the early turn, I guess, game breakers, but I find Xenagos is much more consistent in a 40 life format. Saying that, my build is meant for a little more competitive play. Xenagos, it's very hard to make him tier 1. However, he is extremely resilient against very good decks. So it's been a lot of fun to play him. Okay, so just briefly, he's 5 mana. He's red and green. Indestructible is 6/5. If you have 7 or more devotion, he turns into a creature. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. So he doubles a creature and gives it haste. So I'll show you some of the cards I have in the deck. I do have a lot of basics in this deck. I have a lot of fetch, and I'll go into that a little bit later. I have Dryad Arbor. Now usually I wouldn't include this in many of my green decks, but I do have Green Sun Zenith in there, so you can get Dryad Arbor for 1. It's a nice little ramp trick. What else do we have here? I have Gaia's Cradle also, and that works pretty well with Dryad Arbor. Ancient Tomb. I have all the fetch lands, so Bloodstained Mirror, Misty Rainforest, everything. City of Brass, Mana Confluence. Cavern of Souls is pretty important in this deck. Kessig Wolfrun is also exceptionally good. If you have a creature out that hasn't been dealt with, you can dump all your mana into it, and then it gets doubled. So let's say if you have, I don't know, 7 mana available, you can put 5 mana into an elf, so it gets +5/+0, so it's a 6/1, and then Xenagos doubles it, making it a 12/7. Kessig Wolfrun is one of the best cards in this deck. Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. I find it comes in handy with a lot of my my heavier stuff here because it's, red or green. What else? Oh, and then the other interesting land I have here is Skarg, the Rage Pits. Just gives a creature +1/+1 and trample. That's important for this deck because you can have the biggest beater you want, but if it's not getting through of a 1/1 token, it's next to useless. That's also why I don't have a card called Malignus in here. Malignus is a card that is half of your opponent's life total. I believe, I don't know how much it is to cast, maybe 5 or 6. Anyways, when it gets doubled, it's 100% of your opponent's life total, and 1 hit will usually win the game. Saying that, it doesn't do much on its own. It's just a huge beater. So I haven't included it in this deck. Now, the first part of my curve, as you can see here, my curve is not exactly even, and it gets a little heavy at the end. But that's because the start of my curve, 1 to 4, is so much ramp that that these beaters come out on turn 4 or 5 easily. Okay, I'll just go through some of the mana package I have here. So I do have 37 lands, which is probably a little bit much. Maybe I'll cut it down, just based on all the sheer ramp I have here. Mana Crypt, I have Land War Elves, Jorga Tree Speaker, Thin Horn Elves, Elvish Mystic, Birds of Paradise, excuse me, Arbor Elf. I have Lotus Cobra, which is really good with those fetch lands that I have there. Lotus Cobra and a fetch land. Sorry, Lotus Cobra is whenever a land add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So if you put a fetch land down, it adds a color. Then you sack the fetch land to get another land. It adds another mana to your mana pool, and now you have that mana that you just fetched available. So it's almost like 3 for 1. Nature's Lore and 3 visits. These are my favorite ramp spells that aren't mana rocks. Search your library for a forest card and put that card onto the battlefield. So it's 2 mana to search for a forest. So you'd usually be searching for maybe one of the dual lands, because it doesn't have to be a basic forest, and it comes in untapped, which basically makes Nature's Lore and 3 visits 1 mana to get a mana, so you can continue playing your turn. Zakura Tribe Elder, just sack to get a basic land. Rada, Zertot Druid, she's pretty cool. Just 2 mana, add 1 to your mana pool, she deals 1 damage. What else do we have here? Cultivate, Wood Elves, Sky Shard Claim, and then we have a bunch of other things that produce mana, but do other things too, like Xenagos and Garuk. I'll go into those later. Yeah, so that's quite a bit of mana ramp we have here. I would say we have 37 lands, but probably 60 things in total that produce mana. That includes lands. So this deck, it gets out its fatties pretty fast. Okay, I'll go through my other 1-drops. Crop Rotation, not much to say there. You really want to hit Gaia's Cradle in this deck. Although this isn't a swarm deck, Gaia's Cradle, it's always great. If you don't need Gaia's Cradle, there's Shrine to Nykthos. There's Cavern of Souls, which shines in this deck against control players, and Kessig Wolf Run once again. I find I go for Kessig Wolf Run quite often, because your opponent doesn't expect, a Wood Elves to be hitting them for 15 in the face on turn like 5. And that's what Xenagos is pretty good at. It's so freaking fast that that your opponents really have to hold up some mana to stop what you're doing. What else? Okay, we have Rancor. Rancor, I really like it in this build. It's a +2/+0. When Xenagos activates it, it basically makes your creature +4/+2, and it gives it trample, which, as I said earlier, it's very important for this deck, just so you have actual use out of those guys that hit. Sylvan Tutor, Worldly Tutor, just to get creatures. That's pretty self-explanatory. Sensei's Divining top 2, just to get some delve, or dig rather. Okay, I have Fauna Shaman and Survival of the Fittest. These are everyone knows how strong these cards are in 1v1. You pay 1 mana to discard a creature, and then you search for a creature. So you can search for any of these big guys. We have 33 creatures in the deck, so more than 1/3 of the deck, or sorry, exactly 1/3 of the deck is creatures. So these aren't hard to get online. And if I was playing against a deck that dropped a Fauna Shaman or Survival of the Fittest on turn 2, I would do my best to get rid of it. We have Sylvan Library in here. Yeah, there it is. Holy cow. That's just 2 cards per turn. Usually in 1v1, especially with the Xenagos deck, I'll take the damage just to get those cards in my hand. And because Xenagos is so fast, you find that you're usually killing your opponent before you can kill yourself with Sylvan Library cards. There's also a tremendous amount of tutoring in here for lands and for creatures. So if you don't like the cards on top, you can just shovel them away. Sylvan Library, I mean, it goes... I'm trying to think of a green deck that it doesn't go in, and I don't think I can. Sylvan Library goes in every green deck. I said it. What else do we have here? Okay, Life's Legacy is a card that came out in N15. This is crazy. I don't know why they printed this card. This is so good. As additional cost to cast Life's Legacy, sacrifice a creature. Draw a card equal to sacrifice creature's power. So when Xenagos activates, let's say on a reclamation stage, You don't have to attack with that Reclamation Sage. It just sticks around until the end of turn, and it's still a 4/2. So when you use Life's Legacy, you just sack it and draw that many cards. Obviously, an auto include for Xenagos. We have things like Momentous Downfall in this deck. Sorry, Momentous Fall rather, which are basically the same thing, but it costs 4 rather, and you get to gain life, but life gain it's not really a thing. Life's Legacy does the same thing, but for 2 mana. It is an insane card, and I recommend putting it in any, I guess, green deck with creatures. It's so good. Okay, so Jite, that's a pretty strong card. It goes in a lot of decks. This one, it performs a little better because if you have counters on your guy, and then you +2 him before you attack, it doubles that, so it makes it even better. So let's say if you attack once with an elf, and it gets +2/+2. You've done 1 damage to them on the first turn, and then on the second turn you can use both counters to +2/+2 it, so it's a 5/5, and then Xenagos makes it a 10/10. So pretty strong card. And obviously, I don't have to go into the -- or the gain 2 life. It's Jite. It's going to be broken no matter what deck it's in. Okay, so just my removal package. I have Chaos Warp, Beast Within, Song of the Dryads. This is a card that came out in the new Commander set. Enchanted Permanent is a colorless forest. It's pretty good for green decks because it can get rid of things like Planeswalkers. I have Flame Tongue Kavu, Karn, Duplicant, Woodfall Primus, Terastodon. I have Reclamation Sage to get rid of artifacts. Acidic Slime. That's pretty much my removal package. I'll go into a little bit about those cards in a second here. Chaos Warp and Beast Within. I don't really have to explain. Fierce Empath. This is a card that that's pretty important for the deck, just because of, as you can see, where my 6 curve is right here. It's pretty heavy. I have a lot of 6s, a lot of 5s, a lot of 4s. Or excuse me. Let me say that again. This is my 5 curve. I have 6 in my 5, 5 in my 6, 4 in my 7, and 2 in my 8. So it's a huge, like, it's a big fat curve. But it gets out so fast with some of the stuff I have in this deck. And Fierce Empath searches for everything. Basically, well, past 6 rather. So it searches for 9, 11 cards in my deck. And many of those cards just end the game. Alright, where are we? Eternal Witness. Don't have to go in too much detail about that. Just get a card back from your graveyard. I used to have Regrowth in here, but Eternal Witness is just much better with the body and for 1 more mana. Domri Raid. He's really good in this deck. His +1 hits, well, with 33 creatures exactly 1/3 of the time. Target creature you control fights another creature. That's fantastic for this deck too, just to get some removal to make way for your fatties. I also have Gruul Rage Beast in here. I won't go into that later. I'll just tell you right now. When this enters the battlefield, it fights another creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, that creature fights a creature. So I've been very happy with this. This has ended games for my opponents. Alright, so Flame Tongue Kavu, when it enters the battlefield, 4 damage to target creature. With Xenagos, it becomes an 8/4. Birthing Pod. My curve is pretty good here for creatures. You can just keep on getting whatever creature you want. Oracle Moldaya, that's some more mana advantage. I have Garruk in here. Untap 2 lands. Put a 3/3 beast creature on the battlefield, which becomes 6/6 with Xenagos. You can't go wrong with this thing. And its +4 is not, or its -4 rather, is not irrelevant with Xenagos' ability and the amount of creatures you'll have on the battlefield. Saying that, I was thinking of putting a Craterhoof Behemoth in here, but even with his fat curve, Craterhoof Behemoth seems a little win more, just because this isn't necessarily a swarm deck. You get high value out of big fatties you have on the battlefield. But usually if you have one of those fatties on the battlefield, they have to deal with that anyways. So if they have an answer for that, they'll have an answer for Craterhoof Behemoth. Okay, greater good. This is just an enchantment where you sack a creature, draw cards equal to its power, and then discard 3 cards. Obviously, with Xenagos making your guys fatter, greater good is a little bit better. Harmonize, draw 3 cards. Momentous Fall, same thing as Life's Legacy, except for you gain life. Natural Order is something that is banned in French EDH. You sack a creature and look for a creature, a green creature rather. So, I mean, I do think this card should be banned in sort of every Commander format. Maybe not multiplayer, but on turn 3, if you have an elf out, you can just Terrastodon them, and I would say 80% of the time your opponent concedes to that. It's hard to come back from. In this deck, it's also, you know, it's just game breaking. Bloodbraid Elf. Now I've tried to make my curve so whatever she cascades into, it's going to be mana or just something great. Obviously, sometimes you'll hit Chaos Warp and Beast Within, and you may not want to use them. But usually everything's pretty good, especially Reclamation Sage. That's something that you don't want to cascade into if they don't have an artifact out. But she usually hits ramp, so I'm pretty happy with the include. And obviously with Xenagos, she becomes a 6/4. Xenagos the Reveler. Oh geez, yeah, Xenagos the Reveler. This is another great card in the deck. You can pop out a 2/2. The 0. I tend to use it against black decks a lot more just because I'm so afraid of the sack ability. The +1 is always going to be relevant. Add X mana to your mana pool. I've won games just with based on that ability. And the -6, exile the top 7 cards of your library. You may put any number of creatures and/or land cards among them onto the battlefield. I've never actually used that ability. I've played Xenagos the Reveler so often, and he's gotten pretty big, but I've never convinced myself to use him. Usually the +1 is just too good to ignore. I guess if you're top decking, you'd want to use it, but yeah, the +1 it's enough for me. Kiki Jiki, he just copies some of these fatties. I'll just show you the fatties just to show you the value we can get out of them. Grook's Pack Leader. Whenever another creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so all of these. Genesis, just to get things back from your graveyard. Acidic Slime, all-around removal. Overwhelming Stampede. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So this is basically Xenagos' ability. Xenagos' ability for all creatures, and it gives them trample. And then you can make one guy, I guess, 4 times as big with Xenagos. Deus of Calamity. If you get him out early game with Xenagos, it's pretty hard to come back from. He's a 6/6 with trample. Whenever he deals damage to your opponent, you can choose a land to destroy. Yeah, so sorry, 6 or more damage, but he has to deal at least 6. So you can't kill like 2 lands. You have to just kill 1 land. Molten Steel Dragon. This guy's pretty good. With Xenagos out, if you have 2 more life than your opponent, every life you pay basically gives him 1/1/1 with Xenagos' ability. And he's a 4/4, so he's basically hatred on a stick. This guy ends games if your opponent doesn't have an answer. Saying that, if your opponent does have an answer and you pay a bunch of life, you're sort of screwed. Hellkite Tyrant steals all your opponent's artifacts. It's pretty good. Inferno Titan, it's 3 damage when it enters. With Xenagos out, it's 3 damage when it attacks, so that's 6 damage, and it becomes a 12/12. You could also pump mana into it to make it even bigger. I mean, every 1 mana is a +2/+2. Scourge of the Throne. This is a card I just added. I'm pretty happy with it. It came out in this set with Dethrone in it. This guy has Dethrone, and whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, if it's attacking a player with the most life, you get another attack phase. So let's say if your opponent has 40 life and you have 39, the first time this attacks, it's going to be an 11/11 because of Xenagos. And then it gets another attack phase. At this point, your opponent wouldn't have more health, and then Xenagos triggers again on this guy. So he'd be 22/22, so you deal 11/11, 22/22. Yeah, so you deal 33 damage with one creature. This guy's a pretty fat beater. He also has flying. This is why I like this guy over, let's say, Malignus, just because he has a little bit of evasion. Duplicant, just to get rid of a creature. Balefire Dragon. I've tutored for this quite a bit. With haste, it just destroys your opponent's board. Tooth and Nail. My Tooth and Nail package, it would probably be something like. It really depends if Xenagos is out, but it would probably be something like Terastodon and Kiki-Jiki, or Molten Steel Dragon, and I don't know, Gruul Rage Beast. It really depends if Xenagos is out. Okay, I've already talked about Gruul Rage Beast. Karn, there's not much to say about him. He removes things. He's pretty good for green. Woodfall Primus, 6/6. When he enters the battlefield, destroy non-creature permanent. And he has Trample, so that's always relevant. Terastodon, once again, not much to say about that. 8 mana, destroys 3 non-creature permanents, and they get elephants. He becomes an 18/18 when he attacks, and if you have anything that gives him Trample, it's pretty hard for your opponent to come back. And then Green Sun Zenith, which searches up a green creature. Anyways, that's my Xenagos deck. As I've said, this deck is super fast. It's been a lot of fun to play, and I highly recommend building it if you're on the fence. Hope you enjoyed the video.